Hello, everyone. It is 2 p.m. Eastern, and so to respect everyone's time, we're going to begin right away. My name is Daniel Elliott, and I am Director of Education and Strategic Initiatives at the National Cybersecurity Alliance, and I want to welcome you all to today's webinar, Assembling Your Data Security Toolbox. I do want to let you know that this webinar is being recorded and will be shared with all registrants after the webinar. Please give us a few days or a day or two to get it formatted and uploaded to our website. But we promise we will, as always, publish it and make it available for all of you to review. So the National Cybersecurity Alliance, who are we? We're a nonprofit public-private partnership devoted to strengthening America's cybersecurity through education and awareness. And we do that through three main channels: through convening partners who recognize the strength in the security collective, through educating individuals and organizations on cybersecurity best practices, and by amplifying collective efforts to increase cybersecurity awareness, because we know we can't do everything for everyone. So we want to highlight some of the amazing resources that other organizations across the globe are doing. And so that's really what we try to focus our efforts on: convening, educating, and amplifying. And you can learn more about the National Cybersecurity Alliance at StaySafeOnline.org. And you can follow us on social media, for instance, on Twitter at StaySafeOnline. Now, this webinar in particular is part of our Cybersecure My Business series. And our Cybersecure My Business program is a concentrated effort to support the small and medium-sized businesses across the country with resources and information that they can put into action. And so we wouldn't be able to do any of this without our national program sponsors. And particularly wouldn't be able to do it for free for you today. And so our signature sponsor is Trend Micro, and our affiliate sponsor is Generali Global Assistance. And our strategic partner who helps us communicate all of this is ITSP Magazine. And so I want to thank those sponsors for making this content available, not only our webinars, but our virtual summits. And when we get back to in-person events, our in-person events, our newsletter, and so all of our outreach for the small, medium-sized business community. And so I want to thank them in particular for making this available to you. In this webinar, we've had over 10,000 webinar participants this year. And so we're really excited about the content that we're regularly delivering. And so I know that this webinar in particular will not disappoint. And so we have today, I'm going to stop talking and get right to the content. Perry Carpenter, who's the Chief Evangelist and Strategy Officer at KnowBe4.
Yeah, so why don't we go to the first slide real quick, and I'll set the stage a little bit. So as I was thinking about this, of course, the problem anytime you start to address small and medium business or small and medium enterprise is that there's a really wide range of what that means. And so we're talking anything from basically a sole proprietorship up to a 1,000-person organization. And within that range is even at the smaller end of the scale of organizations under 50 people, you have a wide range of needs that are there, from things that are just general consumer packaged goods and fulfilling needs, all the way up to a 50-person organization that is extremely involved in technology and risk. So if you're a high-tech 50-person organization, obviously you have different needs than a 50-person organization that is just doing general manufacturing or service of some sort. So for me to say categorically, this is what SMBs should do because they are considered SMBs, is a little bit of trying to use a broad brush for something that requires a lot of nuance. And so for me to help an SMB or an SME figure out their strategy would really take a lot of individual conversations with that organization. So that being said, what I want to do is kind of step in some frameworks about how to model our thinking about assembling our data security toolbox, rather than me be prescriptive about saying, if you're a 100-person organization, you need to do this. If you're a 500-person organization, you need to do this. And if you're up to a 1,000-person organization, you should do this. And as you cross over that boundary, here's how the world opens up. So why don't we get into this? I'm going to expose you to two different frameworks. They're going to probably seem pretty familiar to you if you've been thinking about security or data privacy for a while. So Daniel, if you don't mind going to the next slide. All right, so this is a little bit derivative of the NIST framework, but I like this because it's really easy to understand. This is a framework that we used at Gartner when I was there, and it's evolved a little bit since then, but what I really like about this is that it's simplicity. And so at the core of this, of course, you see the idea of continuous monitoring and analytics. So across all these four different dimensions. And really quickly, the four different dimensions are predict, prevent, detect, and respond. And so those are the things that we need to be thinking about in our security programs, and as we think about protecting the data that's been entrusted to us. So on the prediction side of things is the understanding of the threats that are out there, and being able to look at current trends and predict what's coming at us based on all the different telemetry data that we have. And so if I'm thinking about this from a small and medium business matrix, then your telemetry data, if you're a really small organization and you're not entrenched in technology, your telemetry data could be as simple as reading something like the Verizon Data Breach Investigation Report and framing some thinking around that. As you get greater in sophistication, then your telemetry data might include things like monitoring services that you have, or using your security information and event management services, if you were to have something like that, to be able to look at your current events and predict what your future events are. But what I want to move us away from thinking is that within each of these boxes has to be a technology and a vendor name associated with it. There absolutely doesn't always need to be a technology and a vendor name associated with everything that you think about security, because as you think about security in general, we're always dealing with people, process, and technology. And some of the things that we can do as we begin to enter maturity is think about how do we tighten up the people aspect and how do we tighten up the process aspect so that when we deploy the technology, we've done it within the right scope and context and we've got a good understanding of what we're doing. So within each of these, you're always thinking about how do I approach all of those with that type of nuance so that I don't overspend and end up with shelfware, or I don't overspend just because this technology that I've heard about is the new sexy thing that every vendor's trying to talk about. So on the prediction side, it could be as simple as reading reports, talking to analysts, networking with your peers, and all of that. As you grow in sophistication, it can be threat intel feeds and brand monitoring and all that other kind of stuff. And we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail in a minute. On the prevention side, this is all around how do I block things that are coming at me, or how do I stop people from doing things? And so that's the hardening of your systems, the moving attackers away from your systems and preventing incidents. And as we get into detection is kind of like the prediction side, but it's understanding what is actually coming at me, and maybe what have I fended off and what has gotten through, because as I'm unable to prevent something, if I've at least detected that it's happened, then I can move over into this last bucket, which is the recovery side of things. And that's where I am a little bit more reactive. I'm trying to figure out how to contain, and then I'm also continuing the loop around to fixing whatever happened, if that's a breach or something else, and I'm doing some remediation after the fact, and then rolling that back into my prediction. Oh, this has happened now. What does that mean for me? How do I build a threat model around that, and so on? So Dan, if you move to the next slide. This is what you may recognize. This is the NIST cybersecurity framework. And if you've never looked at the NIST cybersecurity framework, that is assignment 1 after this webinar, is to go ahead and pull that down. In fact, look at everything in the 27,000 series within that, because that's going to have a lot of good guidance, not all of it achievable for you, but a lot of good guidance on how to think about the nuances and the discrete aspects that you can be considering with respect to your security program. So the way that they articulate this is identify, detect, protect, respond, and recover. So that identification side is equivalent to what I showed at Gartner on the prediction side. But it's really understanding what the threats are, where they're coming from, and being able to prepare for those. And then you've got your protection and your detection, very similar to the Gartner model that I showed you. Same thing with response. But then this last piece, I think, is also really critical to think about, and that's recovery. So in the Gartner model, respond and recover are of course collapsed into one. As you grow larger in your organization size, or you have a lot more technical sophistication, it may make sense to break out response and recovery for you, because in a lot of large organizations, things like business continuity and disaster recovery are their own department. But if you're small and you're focusing security into small teams, then you may be taking all of that on as the risk that's been assigned to you. And so when you're thinking about response, you're thinking about, how do I respond to this incident? And then also, if there's been damage done, how do I continue operations and then roll my recovery plan into that? But you should also be thinking broader than just general incidents, because you need to be thinking about the types of things that can take your business down. And so those would be things like hurricanes, tornadoes, power loss events, and so on, all the way up to things like ransomware. If you were to have all of your data taken offline because of a ransomware attack, what is your response process and what is your recovery process? Can you recover from that, or is that a business-ending event? And that's what you're trying to avoid, because if you think about the traditional security models, and I'm not exactly sure of the spectrum of exposure that everybody on this call has had to traditional security models, or where you are on the maturity curve. But you typically think about what's called the CIA model, confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Confidentiality is whether you're properly protecting that data. It's very similar to the way that you probably think about privacy. But am I protecting the data against being spilled and known by people that shouldn't know about that, or being accessed by people that shouldn't have the authorization or the access to that data? Integrity is whether the data is being manipulated in an unauthorized or untrackable way. And then availability is, can I call up that data for the purpose for which the data exists, or the systems? Can I access the systems for the purpose in which the systems exist? And so if you kill the availability of your systems, that can be a business-ending event if that persists for too long. If you kill the integrity of the data, well, then that can cause other issues. It could be that you're not able to do business the way that you were, or it could be that you don't trust the data that you have, or that your third-party vendors or your customers don't trust the data that you have. If you lose confidentiality, then the very nature of that is that you've experienced some kind of data breach, and now you're potentially in the news and you're dealing with reputational loss in conjunction with the other types of things that may go along with that. So within all of these, there's, I think, some consideration that you should be giving to how these models and these systems of thinking about data protection and data security interact with each other, because there is an aspect of CIA within each one of these elements. And there is, of course, a number of different ways that you can approach the method to address the inherent security component within each one of those as well. All right, let's move forward into one other aspect. Okay, so within your program, every specific project, now this gets a little bit more advanced when it comes to the maturity of how you want to tackle security. But if you're in the position of you're no longer just kind of in beginning mode with your program, and you're now trying to push through new security initiatives, and you're in the position where you need to get buy-in internally for that. Well, then here's another model that we used at Gartner a lot when I was there, around understanding the value of your program, but then also being able to articulate that value so that you can get the buy-in and get the budget that you need in order to go forward with that plan. So everything should have at least one or two of these components in with it. So you should have an initiative that either helps you with efficiency, so it's going to save you time or money, get people working more quickly, more efficiently, and so on. It might shorten an audit process, might shorten a login time. So if you're doing something like, let's say, password vaulting, and you're deploying 1Password or LastPass or KeePass or something as part of your data security program. Well, then part of your justification for that is, oh, well, this is going to make life easier for my end users. It's going to save them time because they're able to log in more efficiently once they get that up and running. They're able to not have to fumble around and try to remember the password requirements, because this can take care of that for them. So you got an efficiency play there. You could also move into with that same example and say, oh, this is going to help us with effectiveness. So effectiveness is really security for the sake of security. So this is security in mind of compliance. This is going to help us achieve a compliance mandate easier, or it's going to meet a security goal or an industry standard a little bit easier. And so this is going to, in the password manager example, this would help our employees be more consistent in the way that they create and remember good passwords, and use good password hygiene with whatever password rotation mechanisms you may have in place, and so on. So it's going to help with effectiveness with that, which will also help our audit and will help us meet any other security goals. Now, business enablement gets into things that are going to move the actual business forward. So with some of your security projects, you might be needing to figure out how do I get buy-in from the broader business. And with that, if you understand the business levers of your organization, you know, why you exist in the first place. Your organization doesn't exist just to be secure. Your organization exists to sell widgets, or to move data around from one place to another, or to ship things from one place to another, or to improve a customer's life in some kind of tangible way. So that's the thing that you're selling. That's the reason that you exist. So if you can tie the security benefit of what you're trying to do to that larger end goal of your organization, well, then that helps you achieve the budget buy-in that you need. And so that might be if you're implementing an identity and access management program that, let's say a customer identity management program. Right now, your customers feel too much friction when they go to log into your website. It feels cumbersome. Let's say there's been a few large-scale data breaches with other vendors in your industry, and so people are also a little bit scared of the overall security landscape within your market, and so on. Well, at that point, if you do a customer identity management program and you do that well, you're showing value to the customers. You're potentially decreasing the friction that they have when they log into your website, but you're increasing the real and perceived level of security, which is also giving you differentiation within the market because you're standing out above your competitors when it comes to that. And so thinking through this brings a level of nuance to the way that you position your program as you increase in maturity too. So that may not make a lot of sense for a 1 to 10 person organization, but if you're a 250 person organization or a 500 person organization, and you're really starting to grow and increase maturity in the way that you embrace a security program, well, that starts to make a lot more sense to be pivoting around those kind of ideas as you position this internally. All right, let's move this forward one more. All right, so again, if you've not been entrenched in security or technology for a long time, I want to expose you to something pretty new. This is a collapsing of another model. So if you've been in technology for a while, you've probably heard of the OSI model, which has kind of the application level, network level, physical layer, and so on. This is a model that was suggested by Okta, which is a cloud single sign-in vendor. And what they've said is that the modern security stack really just kind of comes down to these 4 layers. And so as we're thinking about our security technology, I do think it's important to think about these different layers discreetly. So the same way that I said, you can take the CIA model and you can bump it against predict, prevent, detect, and respond, or the NIST model. You should also be thinking about the data security needs within each of these from maybe a CIA perspective or another perspective. Oh, and I should mention, there have been people that have suggested augmenting the CIA model with other elements as well. There's been a few different proposals over the past couple of decades. The one that I would say makes a lot of sense right now as we think about IoT and the way that technology can impact our lives directly and physically is to add an S to that. And that comes from Gartner also. So that they're suggesting a CIAS model where S stands for safety. And safety would be the way that this technology can actually intersect with our lives. So if for instance, you have a Wi-Fi enabled pacemaker, well then, yeah, safety is a big deal. If you have an automated car, like a Tesla, well, safety is a big deal. That's a network controlled technology, piece of technology that is cruising the road. It makes sense to add safety as a layer within that model and think about the ways that safety could potentially be enhanced or compromised through the protections that you put in place. So within this model, what Okta is saying is you have to think about the people layer, the human layer of things, the infrastructure layer, so that's the backbone that everything is running on, the device layer, whether that's a computer, a laptop, or other mobile device, or an IoT device, and then the network that all of the data is traversing over. And so you have to really build a plan or at least an awareness for yourself around the things that are going on within each of those in order to say, yes, I have a security program that's accounting for these. And again, it doesn't need to be blinky light products in all of these. It could just be that you've got it documented and you've built processes around what's allowable and what's not. So on the person side, of course, that would include things like training and awareness, but it would also include the ways that you effectively get your people to use the equipment that has been assigned to them rather than just trying to use their own equipment and so on. On the infrastructure side, it would be selecting the infrastructure that you're using, whether that's a network that you're using in-house or whether that's a cloud architecture that where you have multiple subscriptions in place, or whether it's some kind of hybrid model. On the device side, that would be if you've given people PCs or laptops, how are you hardening those? And if you've given people mobile devices, or if they're accessing your systems with mobile devices, what type of management software do you have on those? And then the network, what types of network policies do you have in place? Are you encrypting traffic end to end, and so on? So let's move forward one more. So this is why I say that you don't need a vendor for everything, because the vendor landscape is huge and it is overwhelming. And if you immediately start trying to think, all right, here are all these different categories of technology-based products, I need at least one from each of those, you will become two things. Overwhelmed is one, and broke is the other. And you don't need to be either one of those. What you need to do is think very rationally about the types of problems that you're trying to work towards addressing, and then you're trying to intelligently move in and figure out which types of products or services or processes that you can put in place now to get you the desired outcome that you're hoping for, or at least move you closer towards that goal. And so I would never say that within, that your fix is always going to be a technology. It is certainly not going to be a technology, because a lot of these you could buy today and you might still be implementing it 2 years from now. Or you might buy today and it be the totally wrong thing for you to try to do on-prem versus just subscribing to something that can exist in the cloud, and you can secure it pretty well and be happy with it. And at the end of the day, the cloud service provider would do a lot better job securing that than you if you had to hire, pay for that person's salary and have that person working for you full time. And so there's always trade-offs in this when it comes to being a small and medium business. Yeah, let's move forward one more. So here's how I start to try to think about things. When you're thinking about your protection needs, it's nice to think about it from these discrete paths. Think about your data and do a follow the user journey with that. Start at the user level and say, when a person, whether that's an employee or whether that's a contractor or a customer or a third party that's part of my services chain, when they interact with my systems, what are they accessing? Where is that going to? And let me try to follow that data all the way through towards through the systems and to its logical end state. And then also just try to think about a follow the data approach itself. If you've got multiple systems that are interacting with each other, doing, let's say, extract, transform, load processes, or sharing with third parties, and the person side of that is a black box to you. Where's the data going? What is happening to it? How's it being stored, and how may it be coming back to you, and so on. So you have to think about both of those. What is the chain from a user perspective, and what is a chain from a data perspective? If we move one more, I'll kind of explode that a little bit, and you can go ahead and build that out. And probably one more after that. There we go. So with this, it is really important to think about the user themselves, the device that they have access to, so that's that little computer there, and then any kind of on-prem systems that all of that's interacting with. If I thought about it a little bit more, I would have also put a mobile phone next to this. And as the world grows a little bit more, maybe a little Google Home or an Alexa device or something else like that to show IoT is part of this. But you do have to think about how is the user interacting with the system that they've been assigned, their work system, or the home system that you know is accessing your systems. And then what are the core infrastructure systems of your business that may be on-prem? And then think about the usage that's going on there. Where do you need to strengthen the data chain, or do you need to train the user more, or do you need to build in more effective processes, or do you maybe need to add encryption where it's not been added, and so on. Then if you think about, let's say you don't have any on-prem systems, and you're doing everything through Amazon Web Services, Google Suite, Office 365, Microsoft Azure, Salesforce.com, and HubSpot and Workday and all of that. So maybe all of that exists in the cloud for you. Well, then you also need to be thinking about how am I brokering access to the cloud? Am I using Okta or something like that? Do I have another intermediary between my person and maybe even that Okta or one login system or whatever you're using there? How have I set permissions within the cloud? Because just because all that stuff lives up there and you might feel like it's somebody else's problem doesn't mean that it is their problem. Yeah, they've got the ability to give you the SOC reports and show you that something's been FedRAMP certified and all of that if you're in the federal space, and give you the assurances that they're being audited and they've got the right controls in place. But here's the thing, you still have responsibility for the way that your system in the cloud has been configured. And so you do need either yourself or a third party on your behalf to be checking those configurations. If you don't have the staff internally to be experts on checking your cloud configurations, making sure that everything is set up towards the levels of security that you need, well, then that's where a third-party consultant or a managed services provider or somebody else comes in, and you contract with them and trust their expertise, and you offload the risk of that through contracting. If you're able to build the capacity in-house to have somebody that understands all that, then of course you do that if that's the route that you want to choose. And the thing is there's no right or wrong answer for this. With all of this, it's the trade-offs. Where do you gain the most for your specific business? If you don't think it's the right thing for you to build out a 20-person security team, or as you get even larger, maybe a 100-person security team, then you're always going to be trying to figure out, how do I consolidate to make the most effective use of the people that I do want to have as my security resources that I'm physically paying, and then what makes sense for me to outsource through a managed service provider, a managed SOC or something else that is going to help me properly secure all of these other components that I need. But do pay attention to the settings of each of your cloud-based services to make sure that you're not exposing yourself to risk. I mean, there's been a ton of Amazon buckets that have been exposed just because somebody didn't set permission on them, and that results in a data breach. And so you are responsible for getting that part right, even though it's running on somebody else's computer. The other thing is, if you've got third-party service providers that are accessing your data in the cloud as part of the service that you provide or as part of doing the upkeep, then you need to make sure that you have the right contracting in place with them and that you are understanding their data protection mechanisms, because if they mess up, yeah, even though it might be their fault, you are going to be the one that looks bad if it happens with your customer data. And then lastly, on the customer side of things, it's important to understand what data is actually accessible to the customer and what they might do with that. And if they were to misuse the data, what type of exposure might come back to you. So understand within each of these other aspects, who is the user of that? What data do they have access to through the views that they have? And how might that data travel? Because data likes to travel further than you would think it wants to go. It just likes to go. All right, let's move forward one more. So I've been hinting at this throughout the whole thing. You always have to consider your current stage of growth, your maturity, and your need. Again, if you're a 100-person organization and your focus is on physical manufacturing and you're not doing a lot of technology-based work, then you have a completely different need from a 100-person organization that is selling a technology, that is selling services. And so you have to think about what is your current stage of growth, what's your current maturity on the technology side, and what's your need? And where do you want to go? If you're a 100-person organization and you want to have in-house technology, you want to minimize use of the cloud and so on, well, then you're going to be architecting a completely different path than an organization that is a 100-person organization that, as they grow, they want everything to live in the cloud. They want to work with partners, and they want to maximize their use of on-demand technology. That's a completely different data protection strategy. Ultimately, you're still the one that's held accountable for how you run that, but you're going to build your team and you're going to build your dependencies completely different. And so it's always important to think about where you are now and what your intention is with respect to security and technology a year, 2 years, 3 years down the road. Let's move forward one more. All right, and this is just a word of warning. Don't wait until it's too late to do your business continuity and disaster recovery planning. And it may be that the recent pandemic has already given us all a wake-up call for this, because we've now had to think about off-site work. We've had to think about people accessing our systems through devices that we may not have given them and all of that. But take it to the next level. What if your people have to stay home for the next 2 years? What if you've got this and there is a hurricane that takes out your data center, if you have a data center, or takes out one of your main areas of X, whatever X is, or maybe a third-party service provider that you rely on gets taken out. How do you deal with that? Is that a business crippling event, or do you have a plan for that? Some of that you can only deal with through contracts of having specified ways to get your data back in the event of something that cripples your third party. Of course, if that third party is that they've been wiped off the map for some reason and they've lost all access to data, well then maybe that you need to make sure that they've got some offsite storage or something else. But if it's just that the third party goes out of business, you do need to call back for your data so that you can then contract a different third party to house that. So you need to be thinking about this before it becomes an emergency, because as soon as it becomes an emergency, you're not thinking with your head straight. So you want to build all your contingencies and all your plans and all your threat models while you have cool heads and before the emotion kicks in. And so you do need to be thinking about things like pandemics. You need to be thinking about weather events. You need to be thinking about third parties that may go out, large-scale economic events, as we've all been through, and so on. And then think about, what is the amount of downtime that you can sustain? For some of us on the call, if you're down for a week, you're gone. Others can be down for a little bit longer. But then also, when it comes to things like disaster recovery and business continuity, you have to be thinking about how much data can you afford to lose? Because you always have your event time frame. You also have your recovery time objective, which is how soon you can bring something back online. But then you also have your recovery points that are in that. So if you were to lose data today, but your last backup was 2 days ago, well, then now you've effectively lost 2 days of processing. So how do you deal with that? You have to have all that wrapped into your plan. Now let's move forward one more. So now with all of that context, if you look at these earlier charts that I showed, you should start being able to see, all right, how would I start to build a plan that intersects with these? What is my current tolerance for how much I want to spend on technology for prediction technologies, and what level of technical expertise do I want to put there versus outsourcing that or using other processes for that. Same thing with prevention technologies, detection response technologies, and response technologies. Now, I don't want to get into vendors a ton, but as I think about each of these, let me just call off some of the things that can fit into these. So in the prediction bucket, you could have things like planning. You could do internal threat modeling, which is really just a whiteboarding exercise where you're trying to think about how could something be exploited? What would the attack paths be? Where would they go? What could cyber criminals get away with? Same thing with your disaster planning. What types of disasters could happen? What would it take down? What would the impact be? Who would be affected? What would the call trees need to be so that we can get people involved in responding to that, and so on. So all that goes in your prediction. But then you've also got things like peer networking. It's amazing what you can learn just from talking to somebody else in your industry that's a little bit farther along the path, or even somebody that's a little bit earlier on, but they're asking subtly different questions that you've never thought to ask. Because we all walk around every day with blinders on. And the best way to start to remove your blinders is to talk to somebody else with a totally different set of blinders. So they're looking in a different direction. And so they're seeing a little bit wider field of view than you, even though they have their own blinders. They're seeing slightly a different perspective. So it's really important to take that perspective in and then wrap that into your thinking. Then when you start getting more sophisticated, you're getting into things like threat intelligence feeds, brand monitoring, and brand protection technologies, and so on, all the way through some of the other large-scale services that you might be able to employ around prediction of what's going on for your industry, your organization, and the people within your organization. On the prevention side, it's all the traditional things that you've thought about on the technology piece. That's firewalls, antivirus, VPNs, secure email gateways, application whitelisting, browser sandboxing. If I were to say one thing that if I were a small business or medium business and I wanted to invest some technology on right now, I would look at browser security technologies, browser sandboxing, browser isolation technologies, because most of the main threats that come into your organization are going to be brought in through an employee clicking on something and potentially downloaded something on their machine. And so something like a browser sandboxing technology, or what's called browser isolation technologies, there's a lot of terms for these, can be hugely beneficial because it builds, a little mini detonation pit for all of that kind of stuff. And it's just a little virtualized sandbox for all of that. So browser isolation is really good. Of course, with that also comes things like user training, because I'd rather them not click on that thing in the first place. Your encryption technologies comes into prevention as well. Identity and access management, segregation of duties, types of products and processes, and things like mobile device management. On the detection side, that's where you get into things like data leak prevention, which is also another prevention technology, but you can put it on just in monitoring mode, and so it can give you good detection about what people are doing or have done. Employee monitoring technologies, threat intel again, dark web monitoring, your security information and event management systems, employee-based reporting, I think is really big, because again, that's not a technology. That's somebody picking up the phone and calling you and saying, hey, I noticed something sketchy going on, or I noticed this weird thing, I accidentally clicked on this thing, can you come check it out for me? Or I noticed something that seemed kind of strange over there, can you go have a look at that? So that's free, it just takes the investment in your employee to do that. And then things like outsourced SOCs, Security Operations Center, and so on. And then on the recovery side, I put things in recovery like asset management, because when I'm wanting to recover, I need to know exactly what I have to recover. I would also say, and this is kind of a pithy saying that I say all the time, is that asset management is the key to vulnerability management, because I can't manage vulnerabilities on systems if I don't know that they exist. Same thing, I can't recover a system if I don't have it in my catalog. I don't know where it is. I don't know the data trail to that either. I don't know the business criticality of it. Your business continuity, disaster recovery plans fits in the R as well. Things like hot and cold sites, if you need those, your backups, your incident response plans, your investigation plans, your forensic capabilities, and so on. So there's lots of things that you can plug into each of those 4 functions in that top left-hand side. The critical thing isn't necessarily what you plug into it, but that you think about it and that you're intentional about what you put there, so that you make it count when you put in a process, or when you put in some technology, or when you put in some training in those areas. And then, of course, you're wanting to think about those 4 areas in each of those 4 layers from the Okta model: the people layer, the infrastructure layer, the device layer, and the network layer. All right, let's move forward one more. And I am almost done. So then the last thing really is consider the trade-offs between what you want to own and what you want to outsource. So if you own, you are saying that you are taking on the risk and reward of becoming an expert in that thing and all that comes with it. That means that you get the accountability for it. And you're going to have to find the ability to pay somebody that is expert quality in that area, if that's what you're wanting to do. If you're wanting a really small, lean security team that runs kind of policies and builds processes and so on, and you want to outsource all the technology stuff, well, then that's good. Just make sure your contracts are good and that you're finding good vendors out there that are reputable, that they've got a good, they have good ratings on the way that they're securing their environment, that you've built in the clauses that are going to make that bulletproof for you when you talk to your auditors. But in a lot of cases in today's environment, especially for small organizations, you can't afford to fully create a great security staff, but you can afford to hire somebody in an outsource model that can provide you world-class security. So that's actually a great position that most of the world wasn't in 10 years ago when clouds started to become a thing. And so this is something that's achievable right now. And I say that, totally hands off. I'm not a cloud service, well, we do sell cloud services with my vendor, but we just do employee training. That's what we're focused on. We're not focused on outsourcing SOC or anything like that. So if I were starting a small, medium-sized business today, I would be looking to the experts that are running this and have made this their day-to-day job, because they can afford to pay the people that I can't. All right, let's move forward one more. All right, essentials, I actually wove that discussion all the way through here, so we don't necessarily need to stop there. But I would just refer you back to that Okta slide, those 4 layers. And as long as you're thinking through each of those layers, you're good. And then I think everything starts and ends with people. Your people are your first line of defense, and they're your last line of defense. And so don't neglect the training piece. I say that a little bit self-servingly because I do work for a training vendor, but I've seen over and over and over again that people will spend readily on technology because technology is sexy, and then they'll totally neglect the human side of things. And then a human makes a decision or steps over the line, and that causes a really bad day for an organization. So my bias is out there. I'm thinking about humans all the time, and I want to be clear to you that that is my bias. But yeah, don't forget that and all that. It is always people, process, and technology. All right, let's move forward one more. And that's it.